This video is sponsored by my day job. All views and opinions are my own. Likes and subs are appreciated, but don't hit the notification button. Does anybody actually even do that? Seems annoying. Don't do that. I think most of us were a little put off by Stray being nominated for Game of the Year last year. Could an underdog like Stray really hold its own against titans like Elden Ring and God of War Ragnarok? Well, that's what I finally got around to finding out for myself after meaning to for a year. Let's get into it. Welcome back to JBG. Today we're looking at Stray on the PS5. Stray is that cat game. It's a narrative-driven, light puzzle-solving post-apocalyptic game by Blue 12 Studios. Let's just establish this up front. If you hate cats, you probably won't like this game. If you're indifferent, you might find some love for this thing. If you're a fan of cats, you probably already played this unless you were waiting for the Xbox release. Obviously, I like cats. I mean, the channel's named after my old cat Jiggle-Belly. And I kind of owe dedicating more time to playing games for the channel to my last cat, Furr-Butt. Her last few weeks we spent a lot of time on the couch together, inadvertently leading me to play a lot more PS5 to keep my mind off the reality of the situation. So I'm going to be a bit more biased when it comes to a game about cats. A lot of the charm here is the fact you're playing as a cat, and that description will come up a few times here. Stray is a charming game, though it does get a bit dark. Still trying to be neutral here though. There's a lot to like about this game, starting with the story. As usual, I'm going to try and keep the spoilers to a minimum, especially on a game like this that's narrative-driven. But I'm going to go over the opening and the basic plot setup, and I'll try and keep the contextual spoilers and the gameplay to a minimum also. So Stray opens up with a short section interacting with your colony. Seems like just a little bit of cat fan service here, just a little background before it turns into the underlying plot of the game. Shortly after the opening, you fall off a pipe, down into a sewer with no way to get back up the way you dropped in. Making your way through the sewer, you find your way into the city where the story really starts. The city's occupied by robots blocked off to the outside world. You quickly find B12, this will be your robot companion through the game. He tells you about the scientist he used to work for, and your objective becomes not only getting back to the outside world, but to figure out what happened to the old ones as they call them. Moving forward, you make it to the main part of the city where the robots live. Interestingly, they don't know what you are, and they're initially frightened of you. They think you're a Zerk, a little blob-like thing that lives in the sewer and eats everything, so they think you're going to eat them. Realizing you aren't a Zerk, they start to warm up to you in a weird kind of equal way. They communicate with you through B12 and start giving some direction and some simple quests to get the plot moving forward. This is essentially the plot setup, so I'll leave it here and move on to the basic mechanics. At first, I'm not going to lie, I was put off by a few things here. Initially, I thought they were going to go with a photorealistic look for the game. I didn't expect the stylized graphics the way they went with here. But once you get into the city and see it against the cyberpunk style you'll spend most of your time with, it makes a lot more sense and fits really well. The second thing I was put off by was the controls. The movement can be a little bit stiff for what you would expect for a video game. Generally, it's actually a realistic movement. I just expected more game-ish reaction type of movement. You also don't have free run control, and this contributes to that being put off a bit feeling. There's no dedicated jump. There's button prompts when you're in a spot you can jump or interact with the environment. Like I said, I got used to it pretty quick, but it did catch me off guard as a design choice itself. You also have a dedicated meow button, because of course you do. I only found a few instances where the meow actually did anything, but they were usually funny, so I won't spoil those either. The animations and mannerisms they captured here are on the mark, 100%. From how a cat jumps when it's startled, to how it first reacts to having a harness put on, or how a cat will just smack something then gently tap it trying to figure out what it is.
I love that little guy.
I was surprised to find out they didn't use motion capture for this, and yes, that actually exists. No, they manually animated everything about this game, and with how well they nailed it, it's truly impressive to me. I will say I always thought cats knock stuff on the ground just to see if something broke. And now that I've walked a mile in their shoes,
You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
I'm sure that's exactly why they do it. Your basic traversal consists of those jump prompts I was talking about. They let you know what you can jump on to climb through the environments. And also holding R2 lets you run through the environments, which generally you might just end up holding R2 a lot because the walk is it's a little too slow to feel natural for a game. This is what I was talking about not having free run though. You don't actually have the dedicated jump button, so you can't just take any route you want through the city, you're relying on those jump prompts. But they did do a decent job of knowing where you would want to go and kind of aligning where the traversal availability was. There's also a really good use of verticality here in the major portion of the game. Though the lack of any type of map did lead me to running in circles when trying to reach certain balconies in the bigger city areas, it does streamline more as the story progresses and the settings change. But considering it's a pretty simple game, I have to appreciate they didn't stretch the light platforming puzzles out to pad the playtime either, even if I did end up going in circles quite a few times. Like I said, you'll interact with the robots and get general quest guidance from your buddy B12 as the game goes on. Does this make any sense? Well, no. Do I care that a game about a cat in a cyberpunk world that only robots inhabit let a cat communicate with them through an additional robot? Also no.
Oh my god, I don't care!
They put in specific spots throughout the game where you can claw on a carpet or wall or curl up for a nap. They did use this as a puzzle mechanic sparingly, but mostly it's just some more cat fan service. There's a small inventory system controlled through B12, and you can track the amount of his memories you've collected in another menu. These are the primary collectible in Stray, but they also help develop the story of B12, which essentially adds to the overall story. This menu system is very simple, but completely functional. They do introduce some stealth levels later in the game, where you're trying to hide from drones that'll kill you if you get caught. I don't want to go too far into this mechanic though, since it could get a bit spoilerish, so I'll just leave it at that. For the trophy and achievement hunters out there, this is a pretty easy 100% to get. Though I was on a time limit because I waited until the very last day it was on PS Plus to finally play it. But I'm going to go back eventually and attempt 100% when I pick up a physical copy. I would suggest a blind playthrough first, just to enjoy the game because it's really worth it to play it that way. Even with a blind playthrough, a guide on a second run, and then a speed run for one last trophy, this shouldn't take more than about 12 or 13 hours to get. If you play with a guide on the first run, I'm sure you can get it down to closer to 9 total, but I wouldn't recommend taking the fun out of the first playthrough like that. So let's go over some of the goods, some of the bads, and get to a price point recommendation on this thing. Not many people would argue that Stray isn't a game full of a ton of heart and full of charm. But realistically, this game did not belong among Elden Ring and God of War for Game of the Year. This is also coming from someone who finished all three and really likes this game. Stray went with a stylistic choice for the graphics, and I think they fit really well once you get into the city and see the backdrop that you're going to be playing through most of the time. And the city environment is amazing. The cyberpunk aesthetic went with the narrative hand in hand. The city can be a little bit disorienting in the more complex sections without a map of any kind, and this might just be due to the perspective being completely different playing as a cat. But eventually I could wander around until I found the section I was looking for. Most of the puzzle sections are easy enough to figure out, but there were a few I actually found a little too easy and not satisfying with such an obvious solution to them. The controls are a little bit more stiff than what I would expect for a cat, but the only time I found this really irritating was in a few sewer sections that you're trying to avoid the Zerks. For the most part, it felt fine. Not having a free jump probably added to that a little bit, but like I said, I ended up getting used to it and it didn't ruin the game. With all the charm I keep saying this game has though, it's still a short play. And your mileage is going to vary depending on if you appreciate what this game is going for. Also note that I heard it played really well at launch on PS5, but it looked pretty buggy on PC. I'm pretty sure after a year this has already been fixed, but I can't personally speak to how it plays on PC currently. I generally like to put a price point recommendation over a score on a game. So at what price would I recommend this at? There's a few quick caveats here. I'm a cat person and I really enjoyed it. I'm eventually going to pick up a physical copy of this game since I waited too long to play it, just so I can go back and 100% it. You can find this regularly for around $30 new, and I don't have a problem paying that. I think most cat people will feel good about that pickup price also. For anyone that's not sure, I would recommend trying to get a used copy closer to the $20 point. Mainly due to the shorter runtime, and that you might not look forward to a second playthrough as much as I did. With it now on Xbox, this could be a Game Pass option, so definitely check it out if it hits the subscription service. But I think $20 is a solid price point for this game. Now after all this cat talk, I need to go hug my dog so she doesn't feel like I forgot about her. Let me know down in the comments if you played through Stray and what you thought of it, or let me know if you're an Xbox gamer and you were looking forward to it and you're about to finally give it a playthrough. Until next time.